So the last meeting, I know there was probably some frustrations about how slow we were moving, but again, I ask that we all be patient because none of us are going to be left out. Maybe it's not going to take, or maybe it's going to take longer than what we would like or anticipate, but I think the good news is that we're all going to be included. It's a very much of an inclusive process. What I'd like to do tonight is just do a really quick summary of where we've been, and I really am only going to take 5 or 6 minutes, if that, to do, because a lot of what I'm going to show to begin with, we've already seen. This is what we're going to do tonight, and where we're going to really spend our time tonight is when we get down to item 4, 5, and 6, and primarily 5 and 6, where we talk about individual sign placement and what's on the sign, and we have options for that. And I know there's going to be discussion, but I think we have a process tonight where we'll be able to focus on that, but yet still be able to see and understand and hear and what your all's feedback is. So, you know, we've in the past we've gone through what wayfinding is. I'm not going to spend much time on this at all, but just for those that maybe weren't here, we're trying to provide direction to people that are not only residents but primarily visitors into the town in all forms of movement. And what we're trying to do is create an impression with our wayfinding system. We have a variety of different goals, and what we're going to do is provide you all different options or a family of signs, and we will eventually be telling you where these signs are going to be located. We set up some project rules and examples or assumptions last time. And again, I'm going to emphasize this again, is that we have on each sign, we should only assume that there's only 3 destinations on each sign. And I think we all understand that because of federal requirements. You all responded 2 meetings ago to the type of look or feel of the sign, and you selected this kind of style or character of sign. We went through a variety of different options that we had come up with at the meeting several weeks ago, and we talked about what our inspirations were, and we showed you these different options that we looked at and talked through. We took note of what all of this preliminary family of signs, and this is what that looked like. We played the dot voting game. And actually, as unscientific as this is, it really informs us a lot about what we heard and saw your all's impressions and responses were. And some of those responses had to do with the logo that we were selecting. Maybe not make that new branded logo as prominent, maybe downscale that, maybe just use the word Danville. And let me back up and say, we're not going to be showing you any revisions to the design of the signs tonight. That's going to come later, but I wanted to just give you an update of what we heard. And then if you have any other responses that we haven't covered, please let us know. Legibility at different speeds. We heard a number of comments about the size of the lettering and the color of the lettering, and we'll be showing you some, I think, updated and better options on this. The destination color, you gave us some ideas that maybe that wasn't as legible as maybe you'd like to think, so we're going to be rethinking what those land use or destination colors might be. As you can tell with the dots, other than the one on the far right, there were people that kind of liked a little bit of all of them, and we took notes of individual comments. It seems that a black post side mounted was the preferred option. And to be determined, again, going back to maybe giving you some different options of more prominent land use colors, and when I say land use, that's like institutional versus recreational versus industrial. So we'll come back with the refined sign design. Those are 2 similar words. Refined design, sign design, I can't even say them now. We'll have some different color options. And then I'm not sure about what I call the dental pattern. That's the little cutout squares. There were some that didn't like it, some that liked it. We'll show you some options for that. So that's kind of a summary of where we ended up last time in terms of the sign design. And I'm really not going to spend any more time on that unless there's something that you all think that I missed. And I really want to get into the meat of the conversation about sign locations and content of the signs. That's really what I want to spend the next hour talking more about, unless there's any questions relative to this or comments. We talked about last time, and I think I really did listen to you all, listen to the confusion when we talked about having Tier 1 and Tier 2. So I changed the name to Sector. Tier was maybe a bad choice, which I found out at the last meeting, because that the word tier begins to talk about hierarchies or priorities. So I changed it to sectors. That's more geographic. And I'm seeing some positive responses to that. That's good. So I do listen. So Sector 1 is the kind of the outer perimeter of downtown, whereas Sector 2 would be that core central business district. So hopefully that's a better semantics of defining the areas. Has nothing to do with importance or priorities or hierarchy. It's just a geographic term. And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. These are some destinations within Sector 1 that you all voted. We added some on our own based on our understanding of the community. And again, these are the same land use colors. We haven't changed those yet. I'm giving somewhat of a summary or update of the destinations in Sector 1. Sector 1. And again, remember that the traffic volume discussion we had has a lot to do with our sign placements. And then the decision points. These are really critical components of a wayfinding plan. And you'll see in a little bit, we've actually added some decision points since the last meeting. And then we did show you this in terms of, based on those decision points, where signs would be located based on direction at each intersection or at each specific decision point. So this is actually the same slide that we showed you last time, and we did not get into what the content of each sign would be. I think also important that we picked up on was the discussion about the brown and green signs. So while we had the inventory that we had already done, we did not graphically show that to you, but this is an inventory of all of the green and brown signs. And I think, did we bring that inventory list? I hope we did. If not, but I think it's important knowing where those are located, because some of those may be replaced with some of our new wayfinding signs, possibly, if they're in conflict with some of the decision points. Others between decision points or intersections may stay. So I think it's important to have this inventory in the back of our mind and knowing where and what those are. Okay, any questions so far? So now we get into the real fun part, and this will be a participatory exercise. Matt, if you don't mind passing these out. So, and we're actually going to pass these slides out to you. We've got writing utensils if you need them, pencils or pens. So what we're doing is giving, and you'll be able to see these on the sheets that we're passing out, and I believe we do have enough. Because one thing that we noticed last time was that you can't read these slides really well, and hopefully you'll be able to read these sheets. Now what I want you to do is, as we go through each decision point or each intersection, I want you to somewhat vote, and you can either strike through the ones that you feel are not important at each decision point or intersection, or add on the lines that we provided on the side, add destinations that you think are important at each place. And so we're going to do this for each sector, for Sector 1 and for Sector 2. And not that I don't want you to keep these, but it's very important that I get these back tonight, because this is your voice back to me so that we can find out. Again, it's very relevant to understand what is important to you all, because you all know, you live, you understand your community. Even though I feel like I understand it, you know it better than any of us. So your voices are very important. So we want to get these back from you. So we'll start out, and hopefully we'll see how this flows. This is a little bit experimental, if you will, and we can comment. We do have about another hour, so let's not try and get bogged down in real tedious conversations. And that's one reason why I gave you these sheets, because this is a way of maybe keeping everybody focused and not distracted on individual conversations about one individual sign, because you can tell this is just one of three different slides. 3 or 4 slides. So, and this is just Sector 1. We haven't passed out Sector 2 yet. So, any comments or questions about how I would like for you all to participate? Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about when you have like downtown Danville or something about Danville on here, at places where the big signs are. Mm-hmm. Do you mean in addition to those big monument signs, or do you?
At this point, that will be in addition to. Right now, we are not necessarily saying to remove the large monument signs that there's been a lot of time, effort, and money invested in those. So these are more about the individual component or individual signs that would be one of these family of signs, if that makes sense. Yes, sir. Right.
Be more important than say one on the paper down the road.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a good question, and let me back up to our rules and assumptions. And maybe I went through this too quickly, but I think it's important that maybe I do need to spend a little bit more time on refreshing everybody about this. Is that the further out you are from the center of town, the less specific we're going to be. In other words, if you're out on Stanford Road before, still on, right there at the bypass and going into town, we may say to downtown Danville, but we're not going to say necessarily Constitution Square. Okay? But as you get closer in towards a particular destination, then the specificity of that destination becomes more important. So perhaps when we get to, and I forget where we have it located, but let's say at Stanford Road and Main Street, we may have a sign that says turn left to go to Constitution Square. And that's just an example, and we probably do have a sign, although we may have it, but I think that's where we do have a sign for Constitution Square. Does that make sense? Another really important rule is that if you're on a straight path, let's say you're on Lexington Avenue and you're wanting to go to, what's a good example? Let's just say, for instance, the Dollhouse Museum. If you're wanting to go to the Dollhouse Museum, we may have a sign, and we'll see what an option. We may have a sign at right there at Lexington and Wilderness Trail saying the Dollhouse to the, keep kind of bearing around to the right, don't turn left down Wilderness Road. But we keep going straight on Lexington Avenue. We've already told you to go straight this way to the Dollhouse Museum. Now, at 2nd Street, we may have a sign that says to KSD and Constitution Square and whatever, maybe something else, but we may not say keep going straight to the Dollhouse. because the assumption is that you're already on your path, if that makes sense. Okay. And that's the fourth bullet point. We're going to attempt to take the traveler on the best route that we think is the best route, and we would not, for instance, we would not say turn left at 2nd Street to go to KSD, but then you can obviously go to KSD if you turn left off Lexington on 3rd Street to go KSD. We'd probably say, you make a decision, say, you turn left at 2nd Street, that's probably the only time you're going to get a sign, if that makes sense. You know, we're trying to make kind of, that's where we do make kind of hierarchical decisions. And again, it goes back to our first one, is that we don't have many options here. We can't fill the sign up with 10 different destinations. We got three choices. Focus majority of the signage on inbound traffic towards downtown Danville. And there again, the specificity of that gets more, kind of more focused as we get closer to a destination. Did you have a question? Yes, ma'am.
As we go through this list, is our goal that on our paper, we're supposed to get down to 3 items we think ought to be at this
Uh-huh.
point? Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, if the 3, 4, or 5 options we have you don't like, cross through all of them and add your 3 choices.
But the goal is that there should be 3 remaining.
Right. See, it's not a. Yes, let me. I didn't this time. I did last time, but let me move back. Oops. So, let's take, for instance, this, because it's the closest to me and I can reach this. Here at this intersection where you see the dot with the B, that means that's where the sign would be facing. So you would be traveling south on the bypass and you would be reading that B in a southerly direction. Does that make sense? Whereas the letter C, you would be going north on the bypass and reading the sign in the northerly direction. So that's kind of the orientation. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Do these 3 pages represent like every sign that would be there, or let me just tell you what I'm thinking
Okay.
specifically. Right now, if you're on Maple Avenue and you're coming in, when you're at Lexington, there's a sign that says turn left here to the dollhouse.
And that's a brown sign, if I'm not mistaken. Right, right, right.
So in little spot C here, where it's inbound Maple, that's not really at that spot.
Yeah.
Kind of, if
Yeah.
people from that bypass area in, then they kind of need to make a left.
Yeah, let's not get completely caught up in the exact location of where the dot is right now. Now, at some point, we'll be getting down to, it's,
So
you know,
should I write
30.
there, left at Lexington, or?
If you,
right there,
sure,
or-
any notes or any anecdotal things you want to write. So, but for instance, let's just start going through this, and I'm sure each one of your interests will come up. And if I don't hear any comments, I'll just keep on going, and you all have the opportunity to comment on the papers. So 1A is at Harrodsburg Road and the bypass. Now, this is actually an interesting kind of decision point. So I'm probably going to have to get one of these papers myself so I can read it. So at 1A, the choices we have, and this is right here where you turn off onto Maple Avenue from the bypass. So the choices are downtown Danville Center, Millennium Park, Boyle County High School, and that probably should be the Boyle County campus, perhaps. The Industrial Park or Perryville Battlefield. A lot of, yes, ma'am. Okay. This is if you're coming from Harrodsburg going towards Danville and you're approaching that intersection.
The intersection with the
Maple Avenue at Maple Avenue. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry.
Where am I, if I'm today, where am I?
You're at the new connector road or bypass, right.
Am I on the connector heading on?
No, you're on you're coming from Harrisburg Road on 127. You're approaching the connector road.
So that sign would actually be on the other side of the yellow line?
I'm not sure. No, it would be on the right-hand side as you're traveling south on 127. Okay.
Be on the left side of the yellow. Am I right? It's misplaced. Okay.
It's misplaced.
Over to the other side?
It's misplaced. No, Matt.
1A, you're on the bypass.
I'm sorry.
One more time. So you're
And then 1B is that road, so
Yeah.
take a left onto Maple. So we'll get there next.
Yeah.
1A, you're on
So,
the bypass.
yeah, and I apologize. There's a lot of numbers and letters and choices here. So 1B is you're on the connector headed towards the 127. So you have a choice to go to Harrisburg or the Perryville Battlefield or the high school campus, and it's actually it's a left or right turn choice. Okay? 1A is you're on the connector. 1B is you're on 127. You've passed the connector. We are saying we're not going to turn anybody to a destination onto the connector. We're saying that the most important destinations should be signed just after you pass the connector. You know, that's a really confusing area, particularly for those that aren't used to the connector, and you're used to always turning on Maple. You know, I've caught myself turning onto the connector thinking I was turning onto Maple. So that's one reason why we're not putting a sign to turn left onto the connector. We're going to just pass that connector. And then 1B will be similar choices actually as 1B, as 1A, but most of them are going to be turn left or go straight. Okay? Yes, sir.
I think this is really the most important point, so that's why I'm asking. But you have C there on the right-hand side as you're coming south on Maple. And the idea would be to send some people on B on the Maple and then to be more specific on C?
We're getting closer in.
Okay.
Now, here's one, and I've asked Ron and Earl this question.
Yes.
Do we want to, people that are going to Center College, do we want to send them on down the bypass or send them on Maple Avenue?
Absolutely, down Maple. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's the great interest. And
I absolutely agree, but you know, it's all about choices. I see a lot of heads shaking yes, send them down Maple. I mean, that's one of the more dynamic entries into the community. Okay, any questions about one? Okay, and I'm going to keep going through these until you tell me to stop, because we've got two more sheets after this. Okay, number 2 will be at the bypass. I'm sorry, number 2 is the bypass and 3rd Street. So, for instance, if you're coming from Lexington, traveling, you've already passed up Lexington Road, continue on the bypass, we think a critical decision point on the bypass is at 3rd Street, okay? So as you're coming from Lexington on the connector, let's look at 2C. And our choices are downtown Danville, the library, KSD, the Dollhouse, Industrial Park, or Perryville Battlefield. And you know, I'm not going to tell you on each one of these if it's straight, left, or right. Hopefully everybody will know that. If you're coming from Bergen on 3rd Street and you come to the roundabout there, you've got a choice. And these arrows get a little bit trickier on roundabouts, but we'll get into those details later. But coming from Bergen heading south into Danville, downtown Danville, Center, KSD, Industrial Park, Battlefield, or the hospital. Obvious where you go straight or turn left, and then looking for your suggestions. And then as you're traveling north on 3rd Street before you get into the roundabout, that would be 2A. I'm sorry. as you're traveling east on the connector road, and you're coming up to the roundabout or 3rd Street, that would be 2A, downtown Danville, Center KSD Hospital. And this may be some preferences to bring people in connector 3rd Street versus, do you want to take, is it more important to bring people to KSD through Maple Avenue, or again, is it the preferred route? I mean, and yes, sir.
Again, my assumption is that we would want everybody going to the industrial park not to come through town, or is that, would trucks know they're not supposed to?
Yeah, that's a good assumption, and we're assuming that the primary traffic that we're trying to direct for the industrial park would be truck traffic, so we're trying to keep them out of the downtown.
And so that they would, for instance, 2 and 4, they would go on a connector and then go around the bypass rather than
Right,
come through town.
right, yeah. Well, and that's at least my opinion, but I'm not trying to influence anybody. Yes, sir.
Does the hospital,
Well, hold on, let's,
About Boyle County High School. It seems to me that you wouldn't want to be directing people to Boyle County High School off Maple Avenue. You would want to be directing them on around the bypass.
right. That would be the obvious. And so at 1B, you would most likely, if the Boyle County campus was important, you would tell them just to keep going straight instead of turning on to Maple Avenue.
1A is you'd want Boyle County High School there.
You could definitely, I mean, if you're coming, if Lafayette High School is playing Boyle County in football, or, maybe they come around on the connector, and then when they come to the bypass, they turn left. And so maybe there would be a sign there. So that's definitely a good observation. Yes, ma'am.
Despite of us doing this exercise with signs, will the hospital always have those blue signs with the A?
Most likely, and right now, my recommendation would be not to remove those unless they are in conflict with a specific location of these signs. And I think most of the hospital signs, and we can double check this, are kind of mid-block or along a route, and there are some that will say, turn left or right or whatever, but I mean, those are choices that we would need to make about the hospital. Again, we're looking for uniformity and context, but we certainly don't want to confuse, we don't want to have multiple indicators. We're trying to eliminate, and I use this word a little bit loosely, but we're trying to eliminate a lot of the clutter of signs, which is one of the main objectives. Robbie?
My question has something to do with what you just said about you may or may not keep the hospital signs. You had said that your intent is to perhaps keep the monument signs or the green and brown signs that were there. But like, for instance, on 1B, there's some, to my eye, nice looking brown signs and one green sign right at 1B that I believe it's Ephraim McDowell, Constitution Square, Pioneer Playhouse, and I believe there's a dollhouse sign there, which I think is attractive. But my question is, that probably is going to be where you would want to put your new wayfinding sign. So do you feel like that you
Right.
would move some monument signs if it was competing?
If there's competition, our first choice would be not to move the big monument signs and try and strategically locate the new signs so that we're effective with both. And that's obviously a cost consideration also. Okay. So we are now at 3. And 3 is along just inbound on 3rd Street. We've got a long distance, kind of travel distance. We don't want to lose people's attention between the connector road and by the time you get up to Lexington Avenue. So we have a suggestion there of just, getting people just to let them, people, even though people in the world of GPS, it's always still good to give some indicators kind of mid-route. It doesn't always have to be at an intersection. So 3A is somewhere along the way in towards town before you get to Lexington Avenue. Downtown Danville, Library Center, KSD, and then Dollhouse. And for the most part, these would be straight ahead arrows at this point. Number 4 is inbound on Lexington, a similar scenario for 4A, but this is really right at this is a more critical decision point because this is where Wilderness Road splits off. So we have downtown Danville Industrial Park, because we may in fact have some people that have veered off. You don't have to have that. Pioneer Playhouse, I think that's critical going down Wilderness Trail. I'll have to look and see, is there a brown or green sign right there at Wilderness?
Right near Main Street, you mean?
No, at Wilderness in Lexington?
There is a green sign. It's a small.
Yeah,
fake green
yeah.
sign.
Okay.
Center College on Dulce.
Okay. So Center College is part of that, KSD and the hospital. Again, we're on some of these, we're giving a few options, and several of them we're giving 5 or 6 options. The goal is to get down to 3. Any questions about that?
I'm a little confused about the map. What, between A,
Did I confuse you? Which could be very easy.
5 on A, what road is that?
That is, oh, I'm sorry. That is, I said Wilderness. That's actually Lexington. Inbound Lexington.
Wilderness will be on the next.
Yeah, it's on the Sector 2. I'm sorry. See, I did confuse you.
I am.
Okay. So the between 4 and 5 is number 4 is the main intersection, which used to be, that's where the connector road started. There is a monument sign there. Okay. And then 5 is mid-route between the connector road and downtown Danville, or the, right. I'm sorry, Ron.
For each of your sign locations, you have, of course, a number of locations listed. You talked earlier about maximum of 3. Some of the locations only have 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines. Is that different?
Well, the primary the primary requirement there is 3 destinations. Now, if there's a destination that is too long for the width of the sign, we might be able to have 2 lines for that one destination. Right. Right. We try and get 1 line because don't forget, in some cases you're maybe traveling 55 or 60 miles an hour, and so the speed. Okay. Let's go to the next sheet. We have a lot to cover, but I think we're doing well. Is everybody okay with this? How we're doing this? You may, are you getting to a little bit more time? Okay. I'm just, I'm not. I'm trying to listen to everybody, but I'm also trying to get through so that we address everybody. We're still in Sector 1, and we need to get to Sector 2. So.
All 3 of these are Sector 1 stuff.
Yeah, I haven't given you Sector 2 yet. I want to. Everybody, there's a method to my madness. Okay, I'm not getting anything thrown at me, so I guess we can move on. Okay, so the next sheet, let me flip. So now we're at 6 intersection, and that intersection is inbound on Perryville Road towards downtown, or it's actually inbound on Perryville Road or Perryville Road at the connector. And we have suggested signs at each quadrant of the intersection. 6A is inbound on Perryville Road towards downtown Danville. Our options are downtown Danville, Industrial Park, Center, Library, Boyle High School, Millennium Park, Wilderness Trail, that should be the distillery, or the hospital. Okay. On another quadrant, moving south on the bypass at Perryville Road, downtown Danville. I mean, a lot of these options are the same, actually. You can read these, and it's just the arrow is pointing differently. But that doesn't, just because our options are the same, doesn't necessarily mean that we'd have all signs would be the same. Depending on where people are coming from, may dictate what's the most important. So 6C is moving north on the bypass, as if you're coming from Stanford and you're at the Perryville Road intersection. Actually have given those same options to go straight, turn right, or left. But then on 6D, as you're coming from downtown, now this is where the options change. You're obviously not going to tell people to turn around to go downtown. So you can see the options there on 6D, the industrial park, the distillery, or Perryville Battlefield. Yes, ma'am.
Why do we have Boyle High School on here multiple times, but we don't have Danville High School?
I think we have that in Sector 1. Oh, I'm sorry, Sector 2.
It's more or less that's the side of town that we're on, and then obviously that can be written in if that's what you feel should
Right.
be there.
No, you have two high schools and one.
Yeah, let me, I'll give you a thought. Yeah, let me give you a thought. Whereas the Boyle High School, and I mentioned that that really should say the Boyle County School Campus or whatever we say, because there's a concentration of a number of different schools and athletic facilities there. And well, it's part of it. It's not, although athletics does play a big contributing factor to visitors into town, and the fact that there's a number of sports fields. Whereas Danville High School is different because we have Admiral Stadium and ball fields. It's kind of an athletic campus as opposed to the educational campus.
And you also have Franklin Hall at Danville High School, where there are a lot of programs.
Right, that's a good point.
Outside.
That's a good point. No, that's actually a good point, and please write that down because, and trust me, I have no bias towards Boyle County, positive bias. You know, I have a great affection for Danville High School, but in terms of the draw of people from particularly out of town, people would probably need to know how to get to Boyle County High School more so than Danville High School. I understand about Gravely, and quite frankly, I thought about that.
It's right there on the bypass.
I'm sorry?
Boyle County High School is
Right.
on the bypass.
But if you're, like I said, if you're Lafayette playing Boyle County, maybe you do. I understand. I'm not disagreeing. I'm a little bit justifying some of what we're doing, but that's what I'm saying. We're here to hear you all. Yes, sir.
I was curious why on 7A it was Norton Center for the Arts for the first time. What made you switch that up between that and the center?
Let me find 7A. Okay. This goes to the kind of the regional draw of Norton Center, and again, it goes to one of the rules or assumptions that we set up is the closer you get into town, the more specific we get. Instead of Center College, we're going to say the Norton Center. Okay. Yeah. It goes back to one of our rules and assumptions.
That was the first time we were seeing it.
And it'd be interesting to hear the folks from Center talk about this, but I would suspect there may be somebody from Cincinnati to come in to see Aretha Franklin concert. So they may really do need to know. Yeah. So we really didn't talk about, did we skip over 7 altogether? I get caught up. So actually 7 is a little bit closer in from the bypass. We talked about 7A. That's inbound towards Danville. And, you know, do we need to say both Center and Norton? I mean, that's a good question. You segued into that for me. 7B would be coming from Lebanon Road in towards town. And you see the choices: downtown Danville, Center, Dollhouse, Boyle County Campus, or Millennium Park. 7C is outbound. Before you get to the bridge, or is this, Matt, is this right after the bridge? Before you turn left on the bridge, okay, before you turn left onto Lebanon. So Millennium Park, Boyle County Campus, Battlefield, the Distillery, and the Industrial Park. And I would suggest, and maybe you all may comment on this, is that there's probably a lot of visitors, corporate visitors that are going to the industrial park that are not necessarily truckers. So I don't want to, we're hoping we get the truckers to go around the bypass before they get into downtown, but maybe some of the corporate folks have been at the Chamber of Commerce first and they want to go out. I'm just scenarios. You're saying, no, that's not going to happen, but it might. We would hope that it happens, okay? Okay. Okay. So number 8, intersection or decision point, is another one of these 4 sector areas. If you are coming from Stanford around the bypass as you approach Lebanon Road, that would be 8C. The park, the Boyle County Campus, the Battlefield, the Industrial Park, or the Distillery. Likewise, if you're coming from the Industrial Park or on Lebanon, out from Lebanon Road towards downtown, that would be 8A. Downtown Danville, Center, the park, or the campus. If you're on the bypass wanting to go to, say you're coming from Harrodsburg going towards Stanford on the bypass, you have choices there with 8B to downtown Danville, the Wilderness Trail, Distillery, and I suppose that you could say to the Industrial Park also at that point. That's probably what's left off. And then coming from downtown Danville towards the bypass, the 8D, the Battlefield, or the Distillery, and perhaps even straight ahead on the Industrial Park. What's interesting about the Industrial Park is you have industries on either side of the bypass. And that's maybe one reason why we did not necessarily, it's possible at the time you get to that particular sign at the bypass, you've already passed a particular destination. And we are not, I think we talked about this, we're not going to have, as part of this wayfinding package, we're not going to have specific industries or businesses or retail establishments. Now, if it's an institutional or governmental or school kind of destination, we will say to KSD or the high school or the library or whatever it may be. Any questions about this? I actually think we're moving through this very, very well. I appreciate the questions and the comments. We're taking notes. And I see a lot of you feverishly writing, which is great. Are you all okay with how this is going? Okay, good. I'm sorry? Okay, sure. I can catch my breath. And you don't have to sign your names to these sheets. We're not going to, nobody's, we just want to hear and see what your ideas are. And no doubt everybody's comments are going to be exactly the same and make my job really easy. And if they're not, Ron and Earl will help me out. Okay, let's move on. We're still in Sector 1. So let's go to, let's start out on, let's go to 12 first. And this is at Stanford Road and the bypass, kind of, you're actually turning, it's a deliberate turn to turn onto Stanford, whereas you continue your movement on the bypass. So at this point, 12A, we're saying this is really only one sign there. There is a monument sign out there, I believe, is it there, Earl? Yeah, so we would not compete with that, but this would be in addition to. So this one has a lot of different options, so I'm really interested in your all's thoughts on this. Downtown Danville Center, Constitution Square, McDowell Museum, that would actually be the McDowell House, KSD, Pioneer Playhouse, Battlefield, Distillery, and Millennial Park. Okay. Now, one that we left off in this, and if you don't mind just drawing an arrow to it, is Ghost Pike. I think I mentioned to you last time that it was erroneously left off. I think I did add it to, no, I didn't add it on this one, but we weren't trying to ignore that. So at Ghost Pike, as you're going west on the bypass from Stanford towards, let's say if you wanted to go to Perryville, most likely we would not have a sign in the westbound direction for anything because we've already signed it. You're already moving in a straight direction. But there would probably, in the opposite direction, going from Perryville towards Stanford, we would probably have a sign there that would maybe say, and I apologize, I left this off. That sign would probably say to Admiral Stadium, Pioneer Playhouse, but most likely the sign at Stanford Road, at where we have 12, we would not have anything because we had already have made a selection for people to turn. You know, that's the best alternative route if you're coming from Perryville and wanting to go to the Pioneer Playhouse. I think you would rather have people turn left on Ghost Pike.
Right, so you're talking about as well, you wouldn't have a eastbound sign. Yeah.
That's correct, yeah. And I apologize, we left off, but have not forgotten about it. So let's move to 10. We're still out on the bypass, moving in a westbound direction. 10C, again, a lot of choices here. This is a big intersection, 4th Street. A lot going on there, busy intersection. A lot of clutter already there with route signs and to wherever, and you've got competition of retail signs. And so what is the most important destination coming from Stanford going towards Perryville? At 10C, we've given you a lot of choices here. Downtown, Center, Constitution Square, McDowell House, Norton Center, KSD, the Distillery, Perryville Battlefield, the park, the campus, the industrial park. How many is that? That's what, 10 maybe? And we've only got 3 choices. Now, let me say this, and I said this once before, is that while the requirements say we have 3, if I get 4 leading candidates from you all, this is where, particularly at this intersection, this is maybe where I'm going to request a waiver and maybe get that 4th line. But I can't just go in and say, I want a waiver on every sign in Danville. I've got to have, you all are going to help me with a justification because I can take these sheets and say, Mr. Transportation Guy needs a waiver. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a possibility or an option of, in places that are difficult like this, or there's a lot, having another sign
Midway.
how many feet or yards or
Yeah.
millennium back, saying sort of like upcoming something, make a left, or
There is, and I haven't gotten down into that kind of grain of this, but that's you picked up well on another way that we can, instead of a waiver to get 4, maybe we come back, and there's some standards based on the speed limit of how, our spacing. that's another way of doing that. And if there are, at this particular point, if say there are just, from you all, there are 5 absolutes that we've got to have, that gives me reason to either ask for a waiver or maybe add another sign. But I can't have them too close together. In other words, it can't be like 50 feet. It's more like 300 to 400 feet apart, like a football field.
Yeah, which may not matter, but
It may not.
looking at 10B, which is right near the Walmart when you're going, because it's at the Walmart's on your
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
You're heading into town.
Right.
That seems like a place where it would be really important for a lot of people to have representation.
Yeah, and that would be just past, help me out, what's the name of the street that goes down back behind Walmart?
Where the Cheddar's is, like?
Well, it's a little country road that's been partially improved now. What's? Hopperwell, thank you. So that sign would be just, wow, what's going on here? Oh, wow. Well, that's one way to get the meeting over quick. Thank you. Okay, so we're back to, that's 10B, would you be just past Hopperwell before, but it would be right there at that Walmart entry. And you can see all of these signs at these intersections are very, very well populated in terms of the different options, and so we're very interested in hearing what you have to say. And then as we move into town, number 9, this is where 3rd and 4th, or actually it's 2nd and 4th split. And in some ways you don't have any, if you're going into town, you really don't have a choice to keep going straight. You have to bear to the right. But so 9A, we have several different options there. We feel like that while this goes a little bit against one of our rules, where if you're continuing straight on a path that we don't really sign, but where we have a major road like this and there's a very deliberate split, we want to give people a little bit of a comfort level of where they're going. So at the split, we're suggesting downtown Danville, Center, Constitution Square, McDowell, Library, Dollhouse, Norton Center for the Arts, KSD, and Pioneer Playhouse. Yes.
When the state did Brown Act, they often took into consideration things of hours of operation or number of people. Does that play a role?
It does.
In this?
It does. So while we don't have specific counts of visitors, I mean, we have some indicators based on some websites. Our best indicator, and that was one of the slides that we've shown in the past, are number of trips on a road. That's the traffic volume. So, okay. Give you a couple more minutes here to complete this sheet, and then we'll collect these and pass out Sector 2. Your article tomorrow.
The vote will be tomorrow. I think they're done.
Yeah, you've already passed your deadline, maybe.
They were all pulled up for tomorrow, so.
Okay, let's move on. I think we're making really good progress, but we're still, and I'm here until I need to be. I like the progress, I like the flow, and looking forward to your comments. So Matt's going to collect your comments so that we will know what your thoughts are, and we're going to give you Sector 2. He's going to give you the Sector 2 sheets at the same time.
have to decide, and I'm not sure if we can or I can, wouldn't you have to decide where you want people coming from the main three directions, how to get like downtown? For instance, coming from Stanford, do you want them to go around the bypass down, the big road, or do you want them to cut in by Pioneer Penthouse? I mean, wouldn't you have to make that decision before we could do this rationally?
Well, these comments are part of that decision-making comment.
Okay. How do we want people, for instance, to get to center? I know Maple Avenue, but we want them to come through town or on the bypass or, where do we want to get?
I have my opinion, but I'm not going to.
Well, if you could share it, I might agree with you.
Well, no, I don't mind giving. I don't want to prejudice or biasing. But for instance, if you're coming from Harrodsburg and you want to go to center, absolutely turn left on Maple.
But
What's another example?
well, for instance, I'm worried about directing people to the industrial park, or let's say downtown. Do you hit them out at 12A and take them down, past Pioneer Playhouse, downtown? Or do you want to take them around the bypass and then take them in, Second Street, whatever it is, the big one, Second Street?
Yeah.
And you would know that better in terms of traffic and all.
Yeah. My personal opinion is the preferred route would be to go right onto Stanford Avenue past the Playhouse. I think that would be much quicker. And Matt, you may know this answer. He did. What would Waze or Google Maps tell you if you're going from Stanford to City Hall? Would it take you Stanford Avenue or 4th Street? I think so.
So, okay. And that's big enough to.
Well, I think you all would agree with me if you turned right onto 4th Street off the bypass, you're probably already almost at City Hall by the time you get to, I'm trying to think of an intersection or a place, you're just the amount of traffic is going to be slower. So those, I think some of these are maybe obvious, maybe not. Somebody may have a different opinion about the one we just talked about. But I think that when I see your all's votes, that will confirm or validate my opinion. And probably your opinion on that particular location also. So, Matt, do you have an extra copy of Sector 2? Is it up here? Yeah, thank you. So just quickly going through Sector 2 destinations, these are slides that you've already seen before. What you all voted on, we added some of our own. And then by land use categories, we'll probably be changing these colors or making them a little bit more obvious or a lot more obvious. Here's the traffic volume illustration. And then our decision points, and I think we've added a few on this. And this is a slide that we showed you last time where our decision points or sign locations would be, but we did not get into the content. Again, these are the brown or green sign locations in Sector 2, which is more of the downtown area. And you'll see that we've added on these brown sign maps that we've done, we've added the decision points also. So this will help us determine what brown or green signs we keep, if any, or which ones we remove, if any. Okay. So we've got a couple sheets here. I think everybody's kind of into the flow of this, and I think we can move through these fairly quick. Let's start with 1A. So this would be on Maple Avenue at Lexington Avenue. Now we're moving closer in. We're in town. we've already gotten off of the bypass, or we have a general idea that we're getting near something. So 1A, coming from Harrodsburg, going into town at Lexington and Maple, the choices are downtown Danville, Dollhouse, Center, the library, Norton Center for the Arts. I'm sorry, this is 1A at Maple and Lexington. Yes, sir.
I noticed that you've got 2B as outbound Main Street at Fifth, but it seems to me, as I'm looking at.
Did we mislabel that?
3A is in fact, or would be a 3B.
Okay.
Because that's Fifth Street.
Okay,
there.
we maybe mislabeled something. Okay. Okay. We'll get there in just a minute. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. So 1B, going west on Lexington, say from if you were at Danville High School and going out towards Maple Avenue, the choices are Center, Millennial Park, or Perryville Battlefield. We've already passed up probable options for going downtown, going to the hospital, or so part of the decision here is this the best location to take people to Center if they're coming from Lexington or to the Norton Center?
What do you think?
I think it probably is a very good location to take people to Center, because Lexington Avenue is a great road and street to travel, as is Maple Avenue, with Tolliver being renovated. And that's becoming, that whole kind of area is becoming an educational sector of town, and it's just a great entryway into not only downtown Danville but to particularly Center College. I personally like that as a choice to go to Center or even the Norton Center.
You could have been to town earlier, like Constitution Square.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. For most of these, we have a justification. You may not agree with it, but that's why we have these open meetings. Otherwise, this plan would have already been completed. Let's go to number 2, and this would be at Maple and Main Street. So coming from Harrodsburg, right before you get to Main Street, 2A, we've got a number of choices here. Downtown Danville, the park, Perryville Battlefield, the distillery, Norton Center for the Arts, Ferris Stadium. I would say that most people at Mercer County High School know where Danville Admiral Stadium is, but maybe if it's a regional game and somebody from DeSales is, coming at a playoff at Danville, hopefully that's at Commonwealth Stadium and not at Danville Admiral Stadium. But what if it's a regional game and DeSales is playing Danville? I think DeSales is number 1 and Danville is number 2, something like that, ranked right now. So just as an option. I've got to continue following my Admirals, with all due respect to the Boyle County Rebel folks here. So 2B is coming from downtown, going towards Perryville right before you get to Maple Avenue. The park, the battlefield, or the distillery. I'll throw out another one just for thought. Fort Herod. Maybe. Maybe not. It's probably closer than Perryville Battlefield. Just thought I'd. I know. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit. There's too much quietness. Okay. You all were too quiet. I wasn't used to that, so I thought I'd mix it up a little bit. Okay, we've gone through 1, 2. Let's back up to number 4. Let me check something real quick. Yeah, number 4 would be inbound on Lexington Avenue, and this would be at 4th Street coming from Harrodsburg. Downtown Danville Library, the Community Arts Center, that's the first time showing up. Constitution Square, McDowell House, the courthouse, first time this one's shown up. That's maybe maybe somebody from Lawrenceburg was picked up for speeding and has to go to the courthouse to pay the county some money. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Now, I noticed where 2A and B are, right? That's-
Yes, sir.
That's coming, so the gray line there is coming off the viaduct toward the Center College intersection there.
That's right there at Main and Maple is 2.
So this is Main and Maple. You've got one coming on Maple. You've got the other one coming outbound on Main, but you don't have anything coming inbound on Main.
Right.
And is that just because?
We've already had a sign before that telling you to go, you know, and if we could, I would have a map as large as this wall with all of both Sector 1 and 2 on it, but it's becomes just a little bit too small. Okay.
If I'm reading this correctly, the 6C, you had parking, but that would have them going left on 3rd Street, which would be on the
6C, let me get caught up with you. That is on 3rd Street, and that would be to the left
and that's a one-way street, you can't turn left there.
on 3rd?
That's northbound. That's correct, you cannot turn left on 3rd.
That's, you're right. Thank you.
You can turn right.
You're right. Yeah. No, I that's not a good place to, well, no, you could send them to the library. Yeah.
That's what he's saying right now.
Yeah. So that's a good catch. I'm living in the past when 3rd was 2-way. I apologize. Thank you.
I do remember it. But anyway, you couldn't turn toward the parking lot.
You could not. You're absolutely right, and I appreciate you catching that.
But there is a case to be made for providing parking.
Absolutely.
Because it is, you have to go.
So we would say, and that's a good point, and we'll catch that. And a parking sign, if you'll remember my family of signs, we have parking signs that can be standalone without any other destination. So we may send people down 2nd or 4th and still lead them to the public parking garage. Any other questions about these? I think people are jumping ahead of me as you're learning how to read these, which is fine. Okay. And I appreciate everybody's real diligence here tonight. I haven't run anybody off yet, and you all haven't run me off. I think Ron and Earl, maybe this has been a good way to present this, and I think we're going to get some good feedback. And I'm seeing some okays on that. Great. Yes, ma'am.
Well, it seems like somewhere to Wilma's point about 3rd Street, the one-way north, seems like somewhere in here I saw a KSD sign saying head south on 3rd Street.
Yeah, we need to pick up on that. Okay. Our next and last slide. Let's and again, if and the reason why some of these Sector 1s and Sector 2s aren't combined was really more about logistics of the amount of space that we can give the information. And so, but at some point there will be master documents that have all signs in 1 and 2 all in one document. But so I appreciate your understanding of this. So on the 2nd sheet of Sector 2, we are at 3rd and Lexington. Moving in the westerly direction, 7B is and this is right before you turn left onto 3rd, and it is two-way at that point. So 7B would be downtown Danville, the Dollhouse, the library, Main Street, the courthouse, hospital, KSD. Now, I would add that you might want to, we don't have a sign at 4th Street. There was maybe one, there's a couple options that we could do at 4th Street going in a westerly direction, and that might be City Hall and the courthouse. And that's a good point. If you see somewhere where we don't have any signs and you feel like there should be, please indicate that also.
Well, concerning the hospital, you have the hospital at Lexington and Third, if you go that way.
Yeah,
again,
you're right, one way.
You hit the hospital, Lexington and Fourth.
Yeah, right, that would be a good place. Or actually even Fourth would 4th be better or 2nd be better to go to the hospital? Either one. But we would not have both, but we'll take note of that and
Second also comes,
Constitution Square, yeah. So I think we probably need to add, yeah. I'm sorry? Well, that's true. 4th Street takes you, and again, I apologize, I'm living in the past a little bit, but Madeline Rapier Chevrolet and all of that is now part of the, so I am living in the past. Yeah, well, I apologize, but you sometimes get stuck in the past, but, well, the Advocate Messenger, that's right, yes. See, I'm going really way back, but 4th might be the most direct to the hospital. I agree. So we need to add, sign. Okay, let's back up to 13, and this is where we're at Wilderness Road and Lexington. We feel like just the one sign there that would be for downtown Danville, the library, the Dollhouse, the Playhouse, or Millennium Park at this location. And I believe there's an assortment of green signs at that location also. You'll see up here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 destinations on green or brown signs at Stanford Avenue or Wilderness and Lexington. Okay. It is my opinion that we should not duplicate information on destination signs, these new signs, with information that are on brown signs or vice versa. We don't want to duplicate information at the same location, okay? Now, if there's a brown or green sign in between the new signs, then I'm okay with leaving that. Uh, 12 is at, and we probably had this on the wrong side of the intersection, but it would be as you're coming down Wilderness Road, traveling towards Main Street, just past Broadway. We have downtown Danville or Admiral Stadium. There may be others. You may say, okay, maybe the Playhouse should be on here. Well, we've already told people to turn left at Wilderness Trail to go to the Playhouse, and they're on their route already. Whether you agree with that or not, that's the justification. Yeah, I expected that response. And I apologize, we failed to bring our listing of what each one of the brown or green signs are, but Robbie, I'm suspecting that 17E or F on Wilderness, probably one of those is probably the Playhouse.
That's right off of Main Street?
It's just before you get to Main Street.
Yeah, truth be told, I think there's a sign there that my father had made and put up. So
Okay.
one of the ones that the state
It's a faded green? Okay. Well, in that case, it might be on the National Historic Register, and we can't move it, right? And I'm not, that was a compliment. That wasn't a... As we move, let's, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. So we went to, let's go to 11B as you're coming from Stanford, on Stanford Road, right before you get to Main Street. That would be downtown, City Hall, Community Arts Center, Millennial Park. Maybe you want to put the courthouse, maybe not. Maybe there's some other choices. Constitution Square. There's a lot of choices that maybe we haven't listed, But having said that about Constitution Square, I think on 10B, we've said take Walnut to Constitution Square, come in the back way and Main Street. That was a suggestion. So 10, that would be downtown. Voice. Are you all okay without this? Can you all hear me? Can y'all hear me okay? What? All right, getting a little shit anyway.
He's recording, so you have to. Sorry.
I'll switch hands. That's a good idea. Okay. So 10B, downtown Danville, KSD, probably turn left at Walnut. Constitution Square, probably turn left on Walnut. The Visitor Center, turn left on Walnut. City Hall, maybe get straight ahead to Main Street or the courthouse. 11A, coming in the opposite direction, basically you have a choice of turning on Main Street or going straight to downtown, the Playhouse, Constitution Square, Millennium Park. As we get up on Main Street, we're already past Constitution Square because we've already told people to turn onto Main Street, and hopefully Constitution Square speaks for itself. We don't need a sign pointing when we're there. But on Main Street, right before you get to 2nd, so this is 8B, parking, McDowell House, Community Arts Center. Going in the opposite direction from Main Street going east, McDowell House, Constitution Square. Where do most people park when they go to Constitution Square? Wherever they can, right?
Right by Burke's Bakery.
Burke's. Well, that's a good place to stop and.
There's also a small parking lot.
Yeah, right. Okay. Moving on 2nd Street, don't forget people are coming in from the south, from say Junction City area or off of the bypass. We just have a one-directional sign at 9A, directing them to downtown Danville, parking, Constitution Square, the hospital. This is maybe a good decision point to go to the hospital. I think I've covered everything on this sheet. Any questions about this? So there may be some decision points that we missed on these 5 sheets. If there are, hopefully you've marked them. Yes, sir. Did I miss something?
I was just looking at Stanford Avenue coming in.
Yes, sir. That'd be 10B.
Yeah, 10B or 11B, either one.
Uh-huh.
It seems like one of those points you would want people to turn left to the north center unless that's been covered. And I wonder whether it would be better to turn them down Walnut, although they would have all the stops, or down.
Good. I mean, that's a good point. And that's why we have blank lines on the sheets. Not to be cynical about it, but those are great. That's great. You're absolutely right. Somebody could be coming from London, Kentucky to go to the Norton Center. That might be the best route. So I think we have been pretty efficient with our time, even though it's been almost an hour and a half. I'm seeing some, I'm glad this is over with, but I feel pretty good that we've covered this fairly well. I think I told you, okay, so think about if we had done this the last meeting. We would have been here until 11 o'clock that meeting, and because we would have added another hour and a half onto the 8:30, so that's only 10. So hopefully, in retrospect, you understand that the process was we needed to split this up, and it is part of the process. And I can assure you, we've heard what your suggestions, and hopefully we'll get a lot more suggestions by collecting these documents. And right now, we need to absorb all of this information. Our next meeting will begin to wrap this up. We'll have some specific recommendations on these, how we're going to populate the signs. We're going to have some additional sign designs that we'll bring to you based on comments we've received. And we'll begin getting, at each one of these decision points, we'll kind of zoom in and talk about which signs we want to get rid of, and more specific where the new signs will be located. But we're getting there, slowly but surely. Yes, sir.
I wasn't shy with my comments, but before you leave today, can you explain 12A to me? I'm not sure what's happening.
Did I,
That one confused me too. If you're
it's wrong.
outbound, Admiral Stable should be behind you.
Yeah, it's wrong, it's incorrect.
Yeah, both the things you listed there are already
Yeah.
behind you, so.
There.
Yeah.
on 12A?
Yeah, outbound. You already passed downtown Danville Stadium.
Well, you haven't passed, you have not passed Admiral Stadium.
Yeah, you have, it's behind you.
Well, okay, remember I said that 12A should be on the other side of the street? Remember, look at the direction of they. So
So the max,
this would be outbound, but we put the dot on the wrong side of the road. So you would be, yeah, it's inbound. Outbound from Lexington, but it's inbound. The dot was on the, well, the dot is in the wrong location. It should be on the other side. It should be on the west side of,
but you also say outbound. Yeah, so
I'm
the
s-
dot's wrong and the designation's wrong.
Right. Okay. So if we could collect, thank you for the clarification. So thanks everybody for your input and your diligence and your patience, and we are making progress. Are we not? Good. Okay. So if you don't mind, on your way out, if you could sign your name, let us know you were here. And everybody, I think, knows how to contact me. And thanks so much. Thank you.